Hi, this is Asa from Gameondaily with a new kind of video, something that you won't have seen on our channel before, and something that's a little bit experimental for me. This is going to be a bit of a technical analysis of Marvel's Avengers running on the new generation of consoles, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and the Xbox Series S. And it is, as much as being a technical analysis, it is, like I say, a test case for me. I have been setting up a bit of a lab to try and capture this content, so hopefully what you're seeing on your screen right now is at a fantastic quality, because I put quite a lot of effort into recording and uploading really high quality footage, and that is part of the test here. If you are looking to kind of support what we do on the channel, then you don't need to give this video a like, you don't need to watch this whole video. Both those things are great if you want to, but what would be really helpful is if you could just leave a little comment saying what kind of screen you are looking on and whether the quality is coming through kind of good, bad or indifferent. If you're on a 4K HDR screen, hopefully it looks pristine and really nice, but I am relying on Google and YouTube to transcode it onto other formats. So if you are not on an HDR screen, or if you are at a lower resolution, I'd really like to know what it looks like. So please, yeah, do just leave a little comment saying what you've got. Now, the next obvious question is, why am I looking at Marvel's Avengers and not Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Call of Duty or something a little more contentious? And part of the reason is that Marvel's Avengers isn't particularly contentious. So my angle with these things isn't particularly a desire to provide ammunition for people that are arguing about their consoles. I'm coming at this from a position of enthusiasm, curiosity, interest. And Marvel's Avengers is an interesting game. If you have a look at Digital Foundry's original analysis of the game running on the previous generation consoles, they cite the game as being very kind of forward-looking. It doesn't work. It's not fair to say that it doesn't work well on those previous consoles, because it does. It's quite a remarkable game graphically, and the things that Crystal Dynamics have done to get it looking the way that it does are interesting in their own right. But it's a very forward-looking game. It's got presets in there to push your resolution and your graphics, or you can strip it back, take those things away, and then run into a performance mode that really hits the CPU hard. So what you've got is a game that on previous gen consoles pushed them above their limits, which makes it very interesting to see what we can do throwing these new consoles, the power behind them, at the old version of the game, to see what we come up with. It is worth noting the Marvel's Avengers is due for patches for the PlayStation 5 and the Series S and X in the probably near future, so the relevance of this comparison probably won't last for all that long. But while it's here, it is just an interesting test case. Okay, let's jump into the first comparison section of this video, and we'll go nice and easy. Bit of a warm-up. This is just the load speeds, comparative load speeds, getting into the campaign on the 5 consoles that you can see here. Now, you'd expect, going by the specification of the consoles, the PlayStation 5 should be pretty dominant. It should be the fastest by a distance, because the solid-state drive in there, Sony have made quite a lot of noise about just how fast it is. Playing out in practice, you can see here the Series S and the Series X have loaded beforehand, and yeah, you can speculate on why. You can say maybe these old games just aren't optimized to take full advantage of this new technology, but actually you could argue that that should favor the PlayStation 5 even more, with its raw spec, really fast hard drive, solid state drive. So it is a bit unusual to see it come in so far behind the 2 Xbox consoles here. But more importantly, I should say, look how much faster these are than the previous generations, the PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X. I mean, if you're trying to play this game at the moment, you're probably sitting there looking at your phone waiting for it to load. Maybe you've got bored, turned the computer off completely, and, I don't know, gone to make dinner. There's a massive difference between the 2 generations, and that's kind of what this video is about. That's what I'm happy to see. Okay, let's have a little look at a cutscene running across the 3 new consoles only. And the cutscene I'm running in the quality mode or the 4K mode, depending on which version you're looking at, across all 3 of these consoles. And what that does is it locks the frame rate at 30 frames per second, and it pushes the quality of the graphics and the resolution as high as it can. And what you're seeing here is all three of these consoles are locking that 30 frames per second perfectly. It's not a perfect comparison. You can see the PlayStation 5 version here actually launched at a different point in the campaign, so the scenery and the lighting are a bit different, but the frame rate lock is so tight that it's not a big problem that the comparison is imperfect. I'll take it back and have a look at the PlayStation 5 version of this cutscene in a little more detail because the quality mode is quite interesting. Okay, I've paused the video here so that we can take a look at Dr. Banner's arm. The PlayStation 4 Pro, and therefore the PlayStation 5 version of the game, they run a 4K mode, but they use the PlayStation's kind of checkerboarding reconstruction technique. And Dr. Banner's arm here, not just when I was doing this video, but when I was actually playing the game, it really jumped out as a bit of a problem. I'm going to zoom in so we can have a look between the versions and see exactly what I mean there. So now we have the three console versions, and you can see on the PlayStation you've got this really kind of harsh stepping on the arm, which arguably looks worse than the 1080p presentation on the Series S on the right there. But if you look at the Xbox Series X, that's a native 4K. So you've got a clean line and you've retained all of the detail on the arm. The game has quite a lot of straight edges. It's got a very clean presentation, and we'll just have a little look at a couple of examples, but you can see that it does feature clean lines everywhere, and hopefully with this comparison you can see how noticeable the reconstruction is to your own eyes, which is what matters. Okay, so next up I'm going to run through the same mission actually. So this is the follow-up from that cutscene that we just used for the comparison. Hulk drops into this nice lush forest area to go and attack some stuff, which is kind of what the game's all about. I'm going to run the PlayStation 5 version full screen first of all. The performance comparison, I've got the chart up there, but a little spoiler, it does lock 30 frames per second the whole time. And I'm keeping it full screen so that you can take another look for yourself at that resolution and reconstruction issue that I was just talking about a moment ago. So you can see for yourself if it is particularly visible when the game is in motion. So I think it's particularly noticeable in some of the cutscenes and some of the slower moments that you get, particularly through the campaign. But when things kick off and you start moving around, it doesn't jump out to me anymore. But you can see for yourself, it's there now, straight edges abound. And yeah, locking that 30 frames per second. We are going to get some combat here, and one of the things that the Avengers game does really, really well in terms of presentation is that when shit hits the fan, it just looks incredible. The amount of particle effects going on, all of the explosions and destruction, the lightning, the plumes of green smoke. It's a demanding game. So yeah, I guess it's good to see that the PlayStation 5 is locked at 30. So the next question is, are the Series S and the Series X locked at 30? And what I'm going to do is, because we've already seen this section, I'm going to run through the same section, following the path as closely as I could, or vaguely following the same path, making a beeline for that mini boss. And we're going to just, again, they're going to lock that 30 frames per second perfectly. Even the Series S, which is nice to see, because for the price of that console, it's doing sterling work here. And I will just let that run through before we move on to have a look at some of the other modes. Right, so next up I just jump this, it's the same mission again, jumping it forwards towards its conclusion, and we're going to have a bit of an indoor fight scene. So I recorded this scene on all three consoles again, still using the quality mode. As you can see on the footage on screen, it gets a little bit hectic with the amount of enemies and fighting going on. So I thought maybe this is a good chance to strain these consoles, maybe we'll get some frame drops. But we didn't. All three of them, Series S included, locked this 30 frames per second. And I'm going to smash through it and let you see that PlayStation 5 version, because the reconstruction and checkerboarding is quite interesting, and this room is full of straight lines. Can you see them? Not while you're fighting like this. What I will do though is, in just a moment, I'm going to pause the game and flip all three of the consoles over into high performance mode, and we may actually see a frame drop there when we're running at 60. So here is our first look at the highest performance mode, 60 frames per second mode. And if you do look back at that Digital Foundry article on how this ran on the previous gen consoles, it was a bit of a mess with the frame rate kind of fluctuating between about 25 and 60, and it just wasn't the recommended way to play. Now on these new consoles, I'm just going to show the Xbox Series S, and I'll explain why in just a moment, but on the new consoles, they more or less, so the PlayStation 5 and the Series X lock 60, which is great to see, but I'm not going to show it on screen because it's cheating. They put the resolution right down to 1080p, and it's probably a bit too much of a sacrifice. So if you're looking for performance mode, and you're the kind of person that cares about graphics enough to have one of these higher end consoles, you're probably going to want to wait until the enhanced patch does come out. The Series S version though, now if you've got a Series S, you're probably less interested in resolution and image quality and all the rest of it, so it is great to see that this is locking pretty close to 60. There's a couple of minor dips, but not things that you'll necessarily feel while you're playing, so that's good to see. It's good to see because the performance modes were fairly clearly bottlenecked by the processor in the consoles, and yeah, all three of the new consoles are a massive step up. Okay, so I'm going to move on from comparisons between the consoles at this point, because like I say, it's not I'm not really here to provide ammunition for arguments, but what I do want to do is take a closer look at the game and some of the things that are worthy of note. So the first thing that I want to point out is the quality of the kind of incidental art around the game. These posters and comics are presented in a really nice resolution, so you can and they look like you could read them, and it stands out particularly in the campaign where you've got these slower moments. It's just astonishingly detailed, and I really do appreciate that. The character models that are used throughout the game are quite remarkable as well. The game draws a lot of attention to them. You probably saw the loading screens earlier on are big close-ups of these character models that are fantastically detailed, and I almost want to brush Bruce's hair here. It just looks fantastic. I also want to draw attention to the material details that are used. So I'm going to have a big zoom on Kamala Khan's shoulder just to look at the material of the t-shirt, the kind of strap of the bag, and the frayed elastic on the shoulder. It all comes together to just make a really good looking game. So I also want to draw attention to the lighting in the game. I mentioned the particle effects in combat, but they're not used sparingly during the slower sections as well, as you can see from all of this steam. But the lighting in the room is really striking. The whole look of the game is really striking. You've got really high quality screen space reflections as well. And you can see, I don't even know what this room's supposed to be, but you see Hulk walking across another well-lit room. It's quality in the art and the techniques used, and I don't know, it's just a really nice looking game. And we will move into, just for kind of proving a point that these things aren't reserved for the campaign and the cutscenes. If you look at this kind of combat section, it's still really well lit. It still just catches the eye. Personally, I was already a fan of Crystal Dynamics, so they're responsible for the rebooted Tomb Raider trilogy, and those also pushed visuals and looked outstanding when they released. And for me, that team has really delivered again. Whatever you think of the game as a complete package, I think it is fair to say that the team deserves recognition for what they've achieved. And of course, that's not to say that the game and presentation is without flaws, and for me the biggest, most noticeable one is in this shadow detail. It's not prevalent throughout the game, but in places it is quite jarring. And in places it is quite prevalent. So you can see this example, this huge shadow. It's actually it's an unavoidable kind of discovery, because the switch that I need to press here, or whatever it is I'm interacting with, is part of the core campaign. So this shadow on the Series X is just plain ugly. Okay, and that brings us nicely onto what we can expect, or what we can hope for the next gen enhancements when they do arrive. And I think hopefully the priority for Crystal Dynamics will be just to merge and take the best of the performance and the quality modes. If that's all they do, if the only enhancement is that you get 60 frames per second with the visual quality from that mode, then they've got a great looking game on a next gen console. Hopefully they'll have a little bit of headroom, and they'll be able to address this issue with the shadows that I highlighted a moment ago. You can also look at the PC version of the game. You can always look at the PC version to see the potential that's available. And on the PC game, they actually partnered with Intel, so it's quite common to see partnerships with AMD or Nvidia to bring graphical effects into the game. But Marvel's Avengers had a partnership with Intel, so the enhancements that are available, there is a trailer that you can go and check out. I'll try and put a link in the description. But it's things like a lot more physics, a lot more effects going on when you're fighting. When you smash a robot in the PC version, there's even more mess to clear up. So again, we've got really nice processors in these consoles now. Those effects, they partnered with Intel, but those effects do run on AMD processors on a PC. So if we're really lucky, we'll see some of that as well. And then it really is a title that will compete with everything that we've seen, at least from a visual standpoint. Now, I will just reiterate that this video is not a review of the game itself. I'm purely focusing on the graphics on show, so what you can see, and the technology there. For what it's worth, I did actually really enjoy the campaign myself, but I did find the service and the commercial model of it was fairly pervasive. So hopefully the team can rescue that more fundamental part of the experience as well. But it's not really what I'm focusing on in the video, and it doesn't really take away from just how good these visuals are. Just because I'm not talking about it doesn't mean that you can't, so if you want to have a little rant about it and air your frustrations, then by all means hit the comment. And that's all I've got for this video. I say all I've got, it's a pretty long one by my usual standards. And it's been an interesting learning experience for me, but any feedback that you've got would be greatly appreciated. I'm also very open to suggestions on the kind of content that you want to see here. So I've got the tools now, we can do some analysis. There's a lot of space. So you've got the likes of Digital Foundry, you've got NX Gamer, they're doing really quality content, but there is so much content available to cover. So yeah, let me know what you want to see and I'll be glad to have a look. That's it, enjoy your gaming.